Beowulf, A New Telling by Robert Nye. Chapter 2. A Hall Full of Blood. Scyld-Scefing left a son who ruled after him, and that son had another son, named Halfdene. Halfdene had 3 sons, Hrothgar, Hrothgar, and Helga, and a daughter whose name has been forgotten, although she was beautiful and witty and married Onela, king of the Swedes. All Scyld's heirs had some of Scyld in them, though none had quite such giant strength. Of the 3 sons of Halfdene, Hrothgar was strongest, and when his father died, they made him king. Hrothgar had a backbone that would bend to no man. He was bold and fierce, with red hair, a jutting jaw, and eyes like naked swords. While still a boy, he had killed a bear with his own hands. It was not a particularly big bear, but the deed was sufficient to make him famous. Hrothgar himself did not boast, but his poets sang his praises all over the land of the Danes, and men came flocking to join his army. One day, Hrothgar made up his mind to build a great hall with some of the spoils he had won in war. "I had a dream," he told his retainers, "and in the dream I saw a hall that was bigger than any hall built since the beginning of the world. The floors shone, and the roofs were gold. There was ivory everywhere, and a throne where a king could sit. Just such a place I am going to make. Poets will sing in it, of fights and wounds and the might of my grandfather, Scyld-Scefing, and my own brave men will eat and drink in it. I shall call the hall Heorot." Stone for the building of the hall Heorot came from all over the world. The masons planned, and the diggers dug down so that it was founded on rock. The banging of hammers and chink of chisels filled the air, summer, autumn, winter, and spring. It looked like a sleeping giant covered with ants as the builders went about their task. At last Heorot was finished. It stood tall and firm on the edge of the misty fen. By day, it towered above men's heads like a second sun, so bright were its walls and roofs. By night, the torchlight blazing from its high windows, it was like a huge sentinel who did not sleep. Everyone agreed that the king had built a wonder. Hrothgar said, "I am pleased. My dream has come true." And he sent out messengers inviting the most noble lords in the land to come to a banquet to celebrate the opening of Heorot's doors. Poets sang at the feast, and the guests had so much to eat and drink that some of them could hardly walk. Hrothgar gave every man present a ring from his treasury. The music of the harp and the happy shouting of the warriors echoed out across the dark fen and drowned the crying of birds that flew in the night. The banquet over, the guests retired to sleep. Hrothgar had had sleeping chambers built for the most important ones, far away from the smoke and bustle of the kitchens, with great curved couches comfortably heaped with skins. Only the king's bodyguard, 30 of his toughest fighting men, remained in the hall itself. They were supposed to keep awake and watch for enemies, but as it turned out, they were all so weary from the feast that they soon slept too. They satisfied their consciences with the thought that Hrothgar was now so strong a ruler that no one would dare to attack him. Soon Hall Heorot was a palace of snores. Out in the black fen, something stirred. It was cruel and slimy, and its eyes shone green. A part of the night it moved through, its wicked heart was darker than the darkest place in that night. Even the moon would not look at it. A trail of blood was left on the mud where the creature crawled. This was because it fed on living things and had grown so fat and swollen in its greed that bits of the people it had eaten dripped from its scummy lips and crooked teeth. Its claws were red, and its breath, coming in little gasps, stank like a drain. The fen was full of evil things that feared the light. There were vampires and witches and ogres and worms that burned. Horses with no heads and with hands instead of hooves loomed out of the fog. Black bats flew there with wings like coffin lids. Rats as big as dogs swarmed about in packs, killing and eating anything that got in their way. Some of the pools were so thick and dreggy that no one knew what lurked in the bottom of them. A few were bottomless and went straight down to hell. It was from the darkest of these pools that the creature with green eyes had come. It was chief of all the horrors of the fen, and even the angry rats turned tail and fled when they saw its grisly head emerging. Now it made a noise in its throat like the crunching of bones or the sudden fracture of ice underfoot. A bat shrieked. "Grendel!" hissed the warning wind in the grasses. "Grendel! Grendel! Grendel!" The creature Grendel dragged himself toward Hall Heorot. Morning came. The sun shone. The birds began to sing. Hrothgar woke up, bathed in sweat from a terrible dream. "My hall!" he cried. "My lovely hall was full of blood!" His servants tried to comfort him. "It was only a dream, master. You ate cheese before retiring for the night. Bad dreams mean cheese, nothing more." But the king would not be comforted. He held his head in his hands and turned his face to the wall. "Go down into the hall," he said at last. "Go down and see the worst, and then come back and tell me what you have seen." Dutifully, the servants did as he commanded them. They laughed and joked as they went down to the first twist of the great stair that ran through Heorot like a corkscrew. "Ha! Hrothgar's a brave man and a good king," said one, "but he always was a bit superstitious." His companion agreed. "Never eat cheese last thing at night," he said. "Not even if you've got a stomach like shilled chafing. Simple as that." Their feet echoed on the stair. "Bit quiet, isn't it?" "Nothing strange about that. The place is so big. Nice day, though. Hear the larks singing? Tell you what, let's take the couches out in the sun and give them a bit of an airing. Good idea?" No answer. The servant looked at his fellow. The first servant's face had gone white. He pointed waveringly down the stair. Both men started shaking with fright. There was no sign to be seen of the 30 warriors of the king's bodyguard. And another of Hrothgar's dreams had come true. The ivory floors and walls of the great banqueting hall were dripping with blood.